Welcome back to Credit Reddit, and if you're unfamiliar, this is a series where I scour the internet and go on Reddit to try to find the most interesting and funny stories that we could all learn from. In this way I could add my 2 cents in and everything that I've learned in the world of credit cards in the last few years. So let's jump right into it. So the title of this one is called How to Get High Limits on My Credit Cards. So this person says, I've been wanting to get a higher limit on my credit cards for some time now, but have not gotten limits as high as I'd like to have. I recently asked for an increase on my Chase Freedom credit card as I'm getting married this year and want to put some charges on there for travel points, but only got an increase from $4,800 to $5,700. Hard life. Here is some info to get a better idea of my finances. So he's got the Discover Chrome card, which to be honest, I've never heard of that before. A limit of $7,200, awesome, opened in 2016. He's got the Amex Blue Cash Preferred with a $10,000 limit. He's also got the Barclays Financing MasterCard of a $3,600 limit. And the Chase Freedom Unlimited he has a $5,700 limit. His FICO credit score is 776, and his annual salary is just under $50,000. His question is, what can I do to get higher limits on my credit cards? I have always been responsible with payments, and I've never been late on a single payment. Is my salary holding me back from getting higher limits? I have 3 different things that I already think off the bat. One is, well, why do you want higher limits in the first place? I get you have a wedding coming up, but you have a total credit limit here of it looks to be about $25,000. I don't think your wedding is going to be that expensive. I mean, maybe it is, but I don't know if it should be. You know, is this not something that you could possibly just put on maybe your Amex Blue Cash Preferred with a $10,000 limit? You know, is it necessary? And I guess another benefit would be to maybe you expect to have to pay off this wedding over time, and maybe you'll incur that balance over a period of time, so your utilization will be a little bit higher, thus hurting your credit score. So in that case, I get it, and yes, let's talk about how to actually increase your limits. So the second thing is, well, actually increasing your limits really kind of depends on the card you're looking to increase it with. You know, if you're going for something like a Chase, in my experience, they have not given me any automatic upgrades, but I've been able to request a credit limit right within the app, and or just going online to chase.com and doing that, and maybe updating your income a little bit to actually getting a higher credit limit. So 2 pieces of advice that I would actually suggest for this situation, and from what I could see, you could do it pretty easily. Number one, the American Express Blue Cash Preferred that you have. So as of right now, you have a $10,000 limit, and it was opened in 2018. I'm assuming you never actually requested a credit line increase for this credit card. Now, if that is the case, what you could technically do with American Express specifically is they actually allow you to 3x, sometimes more, sometimes less, but usually it's around average, 3x your credit limit as long as you've had the card open for the last 90 days. Now, for a person like you who've had this card for 5 years and you've never requested a credit limit increase, you're more than likely to get approved for that pretty much instantly. And speaking from experience of someone who's had a salary of under $50,000, I've been able to get between $10,000 and $30,000 worth of credit limits with my American Express credit card. So for you, it should be no issue. So right then and there, just taking that advice, you can go from a $10,000 limit to a $30,000 limit, and it would take you literally no more than 5 minutes to get it all done. And this works for people of all salaries. I've had my father-in-law do it, who's had salary and double that, and some people who had less salary to be able to do that. So it seems like it's not necessarily heavily based on salary. But one thing I will mention is a very well possibility that if you do increase to around 30,000, American Express does have this kind of thing that may trigger that if you have one specific credit card that has over $25,000 limit with American Express, they could technically trigger a financial audit, which essentially means you would just have to give them your tax returns, any money and your salary that you're earning. So this way they can kind of verify that you have the income that you say you have. So this way they're not just giving you random limits out there without having an approved salary, and this way you can sue them for negligence. So just a little legal side tip there, but I guess, you know, not financial or legal advice. But honestly, without fail, you can go from 10,000 to 20,000 very easily, and you won't actually trigger that financial audit whatsoever. But a lot of people have reported that it never happened to them, and they've been way over those amounts, so I wouldn't worry about it at all, really. The second thing that I would recommend, which is actually kind of contrary to a lot of people's advice, is actually for the credit cards that you want to increase the limit on, like say your Chase Freedom, what I would actually start doing is taking all of the spend that you normally put on all 4 of those credit cards and now only solely put it on that credit card to get as close to that limit of $5,700 as possible every single month. You're not going to keep that balance. You're still going to pay it off at the end of each month, but at least every single time that the credit bureaus check in and that Chase checks in, you have a balance very close to the total limit that they're giving you on that credit card, thus triggering to them that this is a person that really needs more credit. He wants to use more credit. Let's keep giving him more and more credit so he keeps using the card. You follow? Do that for the next few months. Consolidate all of your spending to that one card, and then request a credit limit increase with Chase on the app or online, and see see if they'll actually approve you for a credit limit increase. I guess a third solution, which is maybe not you since you've only had 4 credit cards, but maybe you actually want to get approved for a new credit card. Maybe it's just a $0 annual fee, another Amex card that's going to be pretty generous and give you maybe another $10,000 limit, much like your Amex Blue Cash Preferred. But I get it, if you're a person that doesn't want to have like a million different credit cards like us, then, you know, that's okay too. Don't worry about it. So good luck, my friend. I hope this helps. Okay, so on to the second one, which if you're into credit limit increases, well, here's another. But this one's slightly different. Let me run it down for you. So the title is, and 2 related questions. 1, is it a bad idea to keep getting credit limit increases on cards that you don't use? And 2, is there a max limit to how much credit you can have across all issuers, not one bank or issuer? He also goes on to say, it's conventional wisdom that getting credit limit increases is helpful since it will lower your utilization ratio, but at some point you can get too much credit across all your accounts. Example scenario, you have 8 credit cards that you've been requesting credit limit increases over a few years, and the credit lines are already massive, like altogether way over 50 to 70% of your income. So he's saying if you have maybe 100K in income, maybe you have credit lines up to about 70K. Say you want to pick up a new credit card with a new issuer to use as your main card. Does having huge existing credit lines hurt the amount of credit you'll get approved for on the new card? Will it affect things like getting loans or mortgages? You know, let me know. So yes, it is conventional wisdom that the more credit limit that you have, the more you can technically spend, or if you keep your spend the same, the lower your utilization ratio would be by comparison. For example, if I have a balance of $500 and only a $1,000 limit, that's 50% ratio. But if I get a new credit card that gets an extra $9,000 limit, so now my total limit is $10,000 and I still only have a $500 balance. So now my ratio is only 5% utilization, not 50, which would be really good for your credit score. So the answer to that is, well, I guess it depends. You know, if you have an American Express credit card, typically they give out really high credit limits in comparison to your salary. Some people have actually reported having more in credit limits than they actually do in salary with American Express, because it's just based on their business model. Whereas like Chase, I've seen people report only having credit limits up to about half of their total reported income. So if their income was at 100K, they were usually capped around that 50K limit. Chase, unlike many other banks, however, will only restrict the credit limit you have with Chase credit cards. So if you have the Chase Sapphire Preferred, the Chase Freedom Flex, Chase Freedom Unlimited, all of those cards together, they will take into consideration that total credit limit and disallow you to get approved for new cards if those credit limits are a lot higher. In that case, what you could technically do is actually transfer those credit limits to that new card, so this way you don't actually gain any extra credit limits. Like say for example, you have a 30,000 credit limit on your Chase Sapphire Preferred, but you want now the Chase Freedom Flex. You could technically take $10,000 worth of credit limit from that Preferred and transfer it over to the Flex, and this way they can allow you to get approved for the Chase Freedom Flex and just kind of share the credit limits between those two. But let's hear what the people of Reddit had to say. So this guy says, if your overall credit limit is too high, some card issuers may become spooked and limit your ability to get new cards. Some issuers will also likely reduce your credit limit on cards you never use to reduce their liability. Very true. Some people get way too worked up over trying to achieve high credit limits that they'll never use. Very true. A ton of people on YouTube want to know, how do I increase my credit limit? But really, I think it's just a vanity number for a lot of people. They just want to see those high numbers, even though they're never going to use it in their life, you know, and probably shouldn't use it in their life anyway. This other guy also has some great advice. He mentions probably not a max limit across all issuers, but you run the risk of overexposure. A reasonable lender might ask you why you want more credit, given that you have plenty across other lenders. Shutdowns or denials can start happening. So this way, if these card companies notice that you're not using these credit cards and you keep requesting credit limit increases, it could kind of show a red flag stating like, why does he need so much limit? Let's kind of reduce his limits to reduce our risk just in case he wants to go crazy. Yeah, and very true too. Like you literally could get denied new credit cards just because your credit limits are so high between all of your credit cards. So I'd rather, me personally, have more credit cards with smaller limits than less credit cards with higher limits. So this way I have the variability in what I could actually earn in like cash back and points back. And this guy named Tidy Whiteys actually has one of the most interesting things that I wasn't aware of. If you want to lower your utilization and you are a homeowner, you could technically take out a HELOC, which is a home equity line of credit. It's basically taking a loan out against the equity in your home or the amount of money that you have sitting in your home right now. You could use that for like funding renovations, etc. But he mentions that as long as you have that open and don't use it, it actually counts as revolving and lowers his total utilization rate. So if you have a house that's worth 300K, maybe you only owe 100K on it, you have $200,000 worth of value that you could possibly get a HELOC on, which now it looks like you have a revolving credit limit of $200,000 as well, which, you know, if you're buying a pack of gum, that utilization is 0.0001%. But if you want to increase yours, check out this video here on how I increased my American Express credit limit by 3x in only about 5 minutes worth of work, so I'm sure you'll get some value from it.